Hey everybody, I'm Amy Anamkara. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have a wonderful sit down with Dr. Rick Diamond. Rick Diamond is a story healer. I was really interested in learning all about that and how I can incorporate story healing into my work as an end-of-life doula. So, before we get started, be sure to hit the subscribe button and be sure to like and share and comment and all that wonderful stuff. And I will also leave his information in the description if you want to get in touch with him. So let's go ahead and get started.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Can,
hello.
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you
Good
hear
to
me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm
Good.
really good. Yeah, I'm great. I'm in it. How's that?
I love it. I love it. I wore my little neck cloth in your honor.
Hooray! Hooray! It looks great. What a good outfit. And the jewelry all goes together. You're totally rocking it. It's
I'm
working.
doing the Texas theme.
I got that. Yes, the denim jacket. What can I say? You got it. You're
You
doing it.
inspired me.
I'm so I'm so glad. It's my pleasure. It's what I'm here for. Fashion
Awesome.
inspiration. That's my goal.
Love it. I see something in the back. It's a mural.
Yes,
Did you do that?
I did, Amy. That's my spirit lion that
Wow.
I painted to have as my energetic setting for client sessions, and because I really like color a lot. And actually, I'm a little colorblind, so the bigger the colors, the better for me.
Right, right.
And so right now, like when I realize when I'm sitting, talking to somebody on a session, on a Zoom session, it just looks like something exploding out of my body, but it's really a lion. But anyway, but anyway, there it is. It's
It
back there.
looks it looks fabulous.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
So I invited you because I only invite people to interview that I'm really interested in, and for whatever reason that is. I saw you on Instagram. I love your stories. I love how you start off your stories.
Mm,
Hello, you beautiful soul, or whatever you say.
yep.
It's just so inviting. I can tell, that you're just a ray of sunshine. So I of course, said, who is this guy? What is he doing? What is the story healer? So of course I did a little bit of research on you. You're a story healer.
Yes.
And I thought that was really interesting because I'm an end-of-life doula.
Right.
And one of my services is to do life reviews with my clients. So
Hmm.
they will have stories for me. But I really
Mm,
wanted to chat with you about what a story healer is and how maybe this is even like a coaching session for me. I don't know, but maybe like how can I use story healing
hmm
with my clients? So let's first
mm.
start off with what is a story healer and how did you even get into that? Because you want that.
Right. What is that? And
Right.
how did you get to be that?
Right.
Thank you, Amy, for having me on. And when you reached out, I got so excited. I was like, she's a doula that helps people with ending this thing and going to the net. And I just thought, oh my, and then, when we checked in, I just thought the connections between what we're doing are so
Right.
clear to me and so rich with possibility. I, what I be, what I'm so interested in is how meaning making comes from what we internalize about our experience. And it's not the experience itself. It seems to me that no, there is no such thing as the experience itself. I mean, yes, there's a tiger running at me and I run because I'm afraid of the tiger. But what's really happening all day long is that we are making meaning and we're creating a sense of our selfhood in the world based on the frameworks and the templates of meaning that shaped us from our childhood, from our culture of origin, from our family of origin, and from our experiences. And even the experiences themselves, we're making meaning about what they mean to us based on the filters that are within us. So over the years, I've been a college English teacher. I've taught in seminaries. I was a church pastor. I was a interfaith community leader. I've been a spiritual director. The through line for all of those for me is that all of us are all the time looking at our lives and looking at our experience and saying, what does this mean to me? And what does this say about me? And what I kept seeing, keep sawing, I kept seeing over and over and over was that people were, and I'm going to say this really clearly, wrongly, that they were wrong. That I mean, I'm not saying that their experience is wrong or that their meaning is wrong, but there were so many ways in which, and maybe you've had this experience too, where somebody's talking about what something meant to them and the meaning that they made from it, you just think, how did you get, where did that even come from? Like, there's so many other options for how to understand yourself in that situation, in that conflict, in what happened in the job, in that ambition that fell apart, that path that changed, that grief that you're experiencing, or your death as your this illness or this death.
Right.
And so story healing is not about healing the person. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with us. I believe that we are divine, that we're beautiful, that we're gorgeous, that we're on meaningful, powerful paths that have purpose, that are laid out for us by our soul and the whole universe. The thing that needs to be healed is the meaning that we have made when it is limiting, when it is demoralizing, when it's shame based, when it's fearful. And so what I do is I meet with people and they say, okay, this is the situation I'm in. And they talk through the situation. And then I say, so tell me about what this means to you. Tell me about what you're feeling about it. Tell me about what's coming up for you. And in there, I am listening for what I call a story. And a story for me, and I've just written a book about this and I'm doing revisions right now and I'm so excited about sharing it with the world. I'm hammering really hard to make it as clear as possible. The story for me is any belief that tells me how the world works and what my place in it is. And it could be something as simple as just this week, I was meeting with a woman who is going through, she just turned 50 and she's going through one of those like nodal moments that's important. And she's feeling into, okay, my kids are grown. Okay, this is what my marriage is like. Okay, this is what's happened with my work life outside the home. What's happening? She's in disequilibrium. She's feeling shift. And I was asking her some questions about what she's feeling about. She's really mad at her husband. I mean, right, that's a thing. And I
Right.
said, what's happening? And she said, nobody in this family values my contribution. And I thought, let's start there. And so we started to unpack where that belief had come from, what had reinforced it, how it grounded in her experience. I just asked reflective questions. She knows the truth. She knows what she's looking for within. And so all I'm doing is providing guiding questions. And you don't have to have a story healer or a partner to do this. We can do this on our own as well. It's simply a question of bearing witness to ourselves and our own
Right.
experience. There's questions to ask, etc., processes to go through. That's what the book is about. But for me, it's really not about saying, well, I know I said earlier you're wrong. It's not about saying what you think is wrong. It's about saying, is it right? Like, is it accurate? Is it helpful? Is it the truth for what you want to do from here? So it's
Right.
seeing the story, testing the story. Is this the truth for me today? Like Byron Katie says, is this belief true? Is this the truth? And then saying, well, what story do I want to shape from here? So for me, that's what that process is like. And it's very rich because people really do know. Does this make sense? People know when something is not right. They know when a belief is not right. And there's something in them that is saying, this doesn't, I know I've got this shame around this issue, or I've got this hang up around this issue, or I'm so mad about this thing, but it doesn't feel right to me. Can you help me get clear about it? So it's a process of getting clarity.
I often think of when we have a story. about ourselves or how we perceive something, it's a story that works for us, good or bad.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But it is, but doing the healing part is where you really have to dig in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if the story's been working a certain way for a long time, maybe 10 years, maybe 50 years, something happens to bring about a shift so that it's not working now,
Right,
or I'm ready for something to happen. But then the process of untangling, well, but it did work for this long in this way. How do I even figure out what to do instead? Or how do I find the courage or the perspective to rethink it and to reimagine it? My question for you, Amy, is when somebody is in illness or when somebody is in nearing the end of this lifetime, this incarnation, it wouldn't necessarily be about, okay, well, now that I'm shifting my job, I'm going to rethink my approach to or my meaning or my story about myself and work. It's not about forging a future path, but there still can be, as they're reflecting on their story and as they're seeing what their stories meant, there could still be healing that could come as they maybe see it in different ways or own it in different ways or new ways. I'm just curious about that.
right, right. And I also feel that there's a tremendous amount of clarity all of a sudden. I mean, there's that shift where it's like I'm
Mm,
holding all of this, and I've been holding all of this for so long, and I want to let it go.
wow.
And so,
So the ending brings a kind of clarity.
yeah, the
Oh, wow.
realization of mortality, right? It's like, what have I been holding all of this time? And it could be bad experiences. It could be forgiveness.
Hmm.
It's all of those. It's all of those things.
Hmm.
And, those folks have a limited amount of breaths left, and they want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the trouble with that is that they don't necessarily want to talk to the people that are closest to them because those people know their story.
Hmm. Hmm.
And is this going to just, shatter what they think of me?
It
So it's
occurs
so
to me,
much easier for them to speak to me about these things.
right.
So I have to also coach them on ways that they could, possibly open up to somebody else. So it's challenging, but wow, it's so rewarding.
I mean,
It's
the
so
people who,
rewarding.
what you were just saying a minute ago, the people who are invested in the story being a certain way
Yeah,
are going to be less likely to say, let's just open the whole thing up. Let's just rethink the whole thing. What if I
right,
hear something that threatens my understanding or my meaning making around this? What if I hear something that isn't what I want? Or what if there's some new revelation? And now what am I supposed to do with that? As opposed to you being there to just say, I'm this safe space and I can hold this, and nobody else who's invested.
right.
In the book, I call those the gatekeepers, the
Yeah,
people who want to make sure I don't want things to change. I don't want things I don't want my illusions to be shattered. I don't want there to be a shift that I'm not comfortable with. That's within us and it's around us all the time. So you're providing an opportunity for people to be able to share their story and own their story and feel into their story in a way that can be really, really authentic and meaningful because it doesn't have all that those checks and balances and pressure on it.
exactly, exactly. They look at me, yeah, just like you said, as a safe, and I'm just a safe person.
Mhm.
I'm maybe somebody that doesn't have a huge amount of investment in them. I'm not a child. I'm not, I'm not a sister. I'm not a best friend. So they're able to open up a little bit easier. And I never feel burdened by it. You
Got
know,
it.
it's because sometimes you can walk, and this, right? They can walk out of the session and you're like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
I don't do that because it's not my
Mhm.
story.
Ta-da! In which case, you're not responsible. You don't have to carry it.
Right, right.
I mean, the brilliance of of this model where you're able to be present and hold something and not hold it.
Yeah,
Like you
it's
really
kind
get
of
to
cool.
be, yeah, it's amazing. You get to be a mirror, really.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true. And I get to ask questions,
Hmm.
you know, to get deeper meaning for them. It can be something where, well, let's sit on that and, we'll talk about it the next time I see you, kind of a
Hmm.
thing, so that it gives them a chance to go deeper if they want.
Hmm.
I can ask questions, obviously, that other people are afraid to ask.
Sure, sure, sure. So as you're thinking about story and you're thinking about helping people with this process of end of life, is part is is part of your objective or your hope that they find peace? Is part of it that they find a sense of selfhood? What's in your head about that? I'm curious because I'm thinking about what some of my goals are when I'm in a session with somebody and they're in the midst of something.
Um, Part of it is peace. I think that, and you know this, right? We're our worst critics,
Yeah. Ah,
right?
yeah.
So just being able to help someone release that feeling
Hmm.
and to just sort of just, let certain things go. Um, it's always different. It depends. It depends on whoever and whoever is sitting in front of me and
Hmm.
what their story is or what their circumstances are.
Hmm.
Um, it's just for me, it's sacred for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Um, I just, I feel blessed when I'm in the presence of someone that's sharing deep things with me.
Yeah.
And if they need help, they want maybe to, draw up a letter or open up a conversation with somebody, I'm happy to do that.
Hmm.
Of course, you never know how that's gonna pan out, but it's just about providing support. So,
I, I love that. I mean, that's perfect, especially because when somebody is facing the end of this life, this experience that their soul is having, that they are in the midst of as it is ending, all that stuff about diminishment and fear and limitation, and like you said, you have a limited number of breaths left. I mean,
yeah,
we all have a limited number of breaths left. It's just not quite so plain to us most of the time.
right.
There's on the one hand there's the pressure of that, but on the other hand there is the beauty of, hey, this is important. Like a lot of other everything else can go to the side, which is
Yeah,
part of what happens in a crisis too, right? Like when somebody comes to find me and they say this thing just happened in my marriage, or this I just found this thing out and I'm freaked out and I don't know how to make meaning out of this new, the story just shifted for me and I don't know how to make sense of the story. I notice that one temptation or one not temptation in an evil way, but like one tendency is, can you just help me put the story back together? I realize the story just blew up. Do you have any kind of glue or something? Because I
right.
really need for that, like I really need for this to make sense again. And no, like I
Yeah, and you don't get
no.
that at end of life. I don't
Right.
get that from people. People are ready to talk. They want to talk.
Mm,
They need to sort things out.
yeah.
They need to talk about things that they weren't able to talk about before.
Yeah. What was keeping them from talking about them before?
I mean, it can be anything like, or just like nobody's even bothered to ask them
Yeah.
questions. Like I
Wow.
see that a lot with veterans,
Hmm.
family members and friends, oh, it must have been really difficult for them, so we're just never going to talk about it, never going to bring it up, kind of a thing. Or
Right.
maybe initially they didn't want to talk about it, but now, it's the end of their life and they need to share some things,
Yeah.
difficult things,
Yeah.
you know. Um, you brought up difficult marriages. That's a big one. That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
because according to their children, they've had the perfect marriage.
Hmm. Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know? And so I hear a lot of those. I hear a lot of those stories.
I believe it. I believe it. One of my favorite things that I've done over the years is men's circles where it's
Mhm.
just men. And for in our culture, where are there, one of the stories, the macro stories for our culture is that men are supposed to hold in their emotions and be strong and blah, blah, blah. It's awful. It's terrible.
Right.
And right, I mean, and the amount of work it takes to get a circle of men to feel safe enough to admit, like you were just saying, here's this thing that
Even
nobody,
how do you even fill the room? That's going to
I'm
be a challenge in itself.
yeah, for men to even say yes to being
Right.
willing to be in that work. It's by the way, my experience is it's always has to be one on one. Very few men are going to answer an ad in the paper, or whatever. I mean, they do on Instagram or on
Right.
Facebook or whatever, but really it's because someone that they trust says, "I really think this work would be good for you." And and still they come in, and I'm good, whatever, how are
Right. Right.
whatever.
I don't want to talk. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fine. Sit, with their arms crossed. And so, since they don't have the luxury, and I mean that in a good way, of being at the end of life where all of those, defenses are down, they still have their defenses up. I'm just going to say I have some tricks, have some tools. You know what I mean? Like, because it's just a process of being willing to enter a space where we're coming down. And that's true for men and women and others, right? It's just a question of being willing to get out of this busy, in our heads place and be down more in our bodies and our hearts and be willing to be open. And there are all kinds of tools that we can use to do that that can seem artificial at first, but after a while they become ritualized in a way that is really meaningful. It's helpful. Okay, we're going to stand and look at another man in the eyes for 1 minute now. Okay, I know we're going to do that every week. Great, right?
Right.
At
Well, that's
first,
uncomfortable.
it's agony at first. They hate it. And I just say, we're just doing it. You'll be fine. Nothing bad will happen to you.
Right.
Another thing that's been helpful in my men's circles is where I will say, I'm going to ask you to place your hand on that other man's shoulder, but you need to ask his permission first. Like you need to say to him, "May I touch you?" And the reason is because so much of our experience has been that we were touched, abused, hurt, slapped, punched without our consent, men and
Yeah.
women. And so in that circle, it's another way of saying you have agency. You get to decide what's okay with you. You get to decide what you're willing to share or not share. And that man has to ask his permission to touch you. In story work, it's the same. I have some really simple tools where it's just a question of opening that safe space so that this thing that somebody's been carrying around that they are keeping under lock and key and they don't think they can, if they ever talk about it, it would be terrible. Kind of like the
Right.
thing about, I need to tell somebody about my marriage. I can't tell my kids, they'll be devastated, but I
Right.
have to talk about this. I can't take this with me. All people want is the opportunity to be able to be heard and feel heard safely. I really believe that.
Yes. Yes. And so that is part of what I do.
Yeah.
And like I said, it just brings me it brings me joy to
Yeah.
help these people get there, you know. So
I
how did you get into story healing? Because that's not what you were doing.
No, 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 no. First 10 years, college English teacher. The thing I fell in love with was the moment when somebody would say, "This is for me. Like this poem is about, like, this is mine. Oh, wait a minute. Learning how to write a complete sentence is for me. Like, I get that." Or when, you
Right.
know what I mean? Or when we'd be in a class conversation about, a piece of literature or something that was important in history or mythology or culture. And I'd show a video clip, from a movie that we just all watched a year ago, and then suddenly they'd see, oh my gosh, this is like, oh, 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 me. And those moments for me, they were awakening. Like they were people seeing, oh, this, oh, 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 oh. So what else can I bring into my experience that can then be a tool for me to figure out who I want to be and how I want to move through the world. And as that was happening, that was in my, mid 20s to early 30s. I also was having my own spiritual experiences that were really unorthodox, and I was seeing visions and feeling things in my body. And I didn't, I mean, we were just going to a nice little local, neighborhood mainline Christian church. I didn't have any language for any of that. And this is before the internet, this is the late
Yep.
80s, early 90s. I didn't have access to the beautiful community that's out there now. And I didn't know anything about Eastern mysticism or spirituality. I didn't know anything about indigenous spirituality and Native American spirituality, but I started learning. And so for me, what happened over time was I got more and more interested in that moment of awakening happening in lots of different settings, not just a classroom, but in friendships and spiritual friendships. And it started happening in a little group spiritual study that I started leading. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just thought this is kind of cool. And this is some stuff I'm finding out. And then I ended up going into ministry, and I was in ministry for 10 years. And it was really exciting when those beautiful spiritual things would happen. But for me, I had just myself, the conflict in terms of personality was, the container for me isn't working. Like, I don't feel like wearing a suit and tie and, having my hair combed a certain way. And these are the words I can say, and these are the words I can't say. And this is how I'm supposed to behave. For me, there was a real disconnect there about the authentic, in my body, in my heart, in my feelings kind of emotional experience I was having and spiritual experience I was having. But it was still always about like that little moment where somebody would say, I really think God hates me. I think I'm a bad person. Like, I've done so many bad things. I think am I going to hell? And I would just say, can you tell me where that idea came from? Can you tell me now I would say where that story came from?
Right, right,
Those just kept happening over and over and over and over. And over time, it just became kind of this accumulated library of the human experience around these are the beliefs. And is this the truth for me? And what I found myself saying over and over was, I don't think that's true. Do you think that's true? Where did
right,
that come from? And then we just get to unpack it together. And
right.
so the I left regular ministry, led a non-traditional, very interfaith faith community here in Austin for 17 years. It was very much about people processing their questions and being open, and lots of story work was happening, and lots of spiritual work was happening, and doing men's work, and doing bioenergetic work, and doing spiritual work, and then after 30 years of ministry, I was like, I'm ready to rest now and rethink all of this. And story work as a practice just came out of that transition. That was about 3.5 years ago. And so I've been doing this now full time for about 2 years, but off and
Okay.
on for, 40 years, I guess. So,
Right, right.
but
And you've
that's where it
written
came from.
and you've written a book. So is your book all about story healing or is it
Yeah.
your journey?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I tell some of my own stories, and then I also tell some stories from my clients that I've been working with for the last number of years. And it's about equipping people to be able to ask some of these questions for themselves, like to understand what my idea about what a story is, but also to say, hey, you're a spiritual being. You're not all of these stories. You're something else. Like, what is inside of you
Yeah.
that is this thing that is this eternal soul? What is this thing that's your consciousness that's more than what your dad told you about what a good girl is supposed to be? What is it that's within you that you can connect to? And so I have some practices about that. And then I also have tools to say, so if you wanted to rethink this belief you have about, like, for instance, as I said, my client says, nobody in this family understands or values my contribution to who we are as a unit of 6 people. Like, what are some tools that you could use to rethink that story and reshape it so that you change that for yourself? And so it has lots of practical tools and worksheets. And I was talking to a friend who's in the publishing business, and she was like, "Oh, I'm seeing a workbook." And then she says, "Oh, could we do like an oracle deck of
Oh,
cards I was like, "Yes, hooray, whatever."
oh, I
So,
love that.
right, that's fun. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying yes because it feels good.
Book tours, right? All kinds
Yeah.
of stuff.
Well, and part of what's fun too is that this can be done. You're doing it. in a way where you're helping people at the end of their life, and you're
Mhm.
helping people at this crisis place where their safeguards are removed, and they're open. I've done this with companies where I consulted with like a board of trustees or a board of directors. I've done this with groups from a church. I've done this with a strategic planning multi-month process with an organization where they were trying to figure out, okay, how did we get here and where do we go from here? So I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So that's fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, so getting back to me,
Yes, please. Enough about me. Let's keep going. I was just about to ask you a question.
well, I don't, how do you think that you could work this into end of life? Like, I feel like this is a whole other chapter for your book. I know you finished it and everything,
Oh,
but
no, no. We're still
you could add
revising.
another
It's still
chapter.
happening. It's still happening. It's still going. We're revising. We're tightening it. We're getting it ready. The thing that strikes me about what you're doing, and I have a dear friend here in Austin, Diana, who is a hospital chaplain.
Hmm.
And she and I were talking about story work, and she was saying that she also thinks about herself in terms of sitting with someone in a hospital setting, in a hospice setting, in a critical setting, and hearing their story. And she says, I'm thinking about how they're making meaning. Like that's what's
Yes,
interesting to
for
me
sure.
about what is, and she has a thing in her that she uses to think about what each story is about. Is this a story about love or loss of love? Is this a story about like their idea of what they wanted their life to be about? Is this a story about their work and their sense of accomplishment? Is this a story about regret or pain? And so part of what she's doing is thinking about when somebody is sharing their story or sharing just their experience, like she's bearing witness to what that is and holding space for it, and is hearing, listening for what is the meaning that is in this for them, and how do I reflect that back to them?
Yeah,
As you're talking about end of life, and you're talking about the idea that it might be about giving somebody peace. It's not just about giving them
right.
a sense of peace. It might be about unburdening something. I wonder if at the deepest level, what you're really doing is simply affirming their humanity. Do you know what I mean? Like, like saying
Yeah,
the thing that you need to talk about, and the thing that you need to own, and the thing that you need to grieve or be sad about or be mad about or to be joyful about or asking questions about is sacred. It is good. Like the thing that you are bringing right now, even if it's just, when I was a girl, I used to da 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 da. That's for
yeah,
some reason, for that woman, something is happening about that memory or that pattern that is meaningful. And you're saying this matters. And
yeah,
how much of our life do we hear that? Almost never, right? We're running and rushing and pulled and all over the place. And your work and the idea of honoring their story is really honoring who they are, like the
yeah,
fullness of their humanity. I mean, no wonder it feels sacred to you. No wonder it feels,
yeah.
beautiful to you that you're doing that, even if it's messy, even if they're mad, even if maybe
Right,
especially if they're mad.
right,
I mean,
right.
I think at a deep level, that's what you're doing.
It's interesting. I mean, like some of the conversations are start off benign,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then something that they said just kind of cracks open for them. And then they will really start to share
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. Um, and like I said, I feel like they can't say these things maybe to their loved ones. It's so personal, it's so deep for
Mm-hmm.
them. But I'm just me. I'm here and I'm listening and I'm laughing when they laugh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm crying when they cry.
Yeah.
And just like you said, we are so busy in this even their loved ones, right? Their loved
Yeah.
ones, when they know, and I see this all the time, when you have a loved one that is dying,
Hmm.
they don't themselves kind of quiet themselves and sit with them. They're busy and they're
Mm,
busier than ever. They need to find something to be busy with.
gosh.
It's, well, I need to talk to the doctor. I need to talk to the nurse. I need to make sure that the arrangements are all done. I need to call
Mm,
Aunt Mary and blah, blah. And they're so busy
hmm. Hmm.
handling
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
that they're missing the opportunity to hear these stories.
Do you judge that this is an act of unconscious avoidance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
this is my whole thing as being, going into being an end of life doula is trying to get people to talk about end of life, talk about
Yes.
dying. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be all gloom and doom.
I mean, we're all going to go through this experience. This is
Right,
a part of it. It's a central part of what it means to be human.
right,
And it's sacred. I
right,
mean, hello. Yes.
right. Well, you know that, and I know that, but
Yeah.
there are the majority of the people out there are running for the hills
We're
because
just so
they're looking
scared.
at their own mortality. I don't want to die like this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's my wife, Christina Wisdom, is reading Ram Dass's book about death, and Ram Dass taught and so much about how we avoid death, and really the thing to do is to embrace ours and others' deaths as being sacred and part of this whole experience. We're avoiding all the time, not just the topic of death. We're just avoiding all the
Yeah.
time.
Right. Yeah. 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 Especially
Tom,
with that little thing that we hold in our hand all day
oh
long,
my gosh.
like
Oh my
that.
gosh. We're so isolated.
Yeah.
We are so
I,
here.
I have to admit it. I do it myself.
I love my phone. I love my phone. I'm not gonna apologize. I adore my phone. But it's no substitute either for being with myself or being with another human being. It's just
Yeah.
not. Fred Tom Hanks talked about studying. He played Fred Rogers in A
Yes.
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and he talked about studying the pauses in Fred Rogers speaking. And he said he read about Fred Rogers talking about why he talks and listens so slowly. And he says he's listening, like he's making
Oh, But it, dri- but it,
space.
but those pauses drive people crazy.
Right. But
They
it's
drive people
so,
crazy. If you're not talking fast enough, they're check,
I,
so I have to pay attention. Like when I do videos, I have to pay attention because
mm,
I do like to pause.
hmm.
I do speak a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And I have to sometimes, speed up the video a little bit because I'm afraid I'm going to lose people. Isn't that awful?
I mean, it's just what
Ridiculous.
we're attuned to. But here, I mean, and you know this, some of the most sacred, beautiful moments have been when we were sitting with another person and nobody says anything.
For sure.
We're
For sure.
just there together. We're just sitting together.
It
We're
is
just
a learned
being.
skill now. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. People don't know how to do that. People don't know how to sit in silence. I love
mm,
it.
I do too. I adore it. And when I'm sitting in a men's circle, you know, the
Oh,
willingness for there just to be silence is so hard to learn because we're all like, how about them Cowboys? I mean, it's just inane. It's ridiculous. We want to come
right.
back up into this place and just the willingness to just sit. A meditation circle where we're
Yeah.
just all being still and there's just quiet is so beautiful. It's so healing. It's so powerful. I've also been part of psychedelic ceremony workshops where people got into an altered consciousness and they got to sit and sitting with someone and just holding their hand or just being silent, where we're not yapping and talking and making meaning because we're scared to just be still. I'm a big
Right.
fan. I'm just saying. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I love it. I love it. And I do spend a lot of time in silence with my clients.
Mm. And it's not as if nothing is happening. A lot is happening.
A lot is happening because what'll happen is they'll be quiet. They'll maybe tell me a little bit, and then they'll be quiet, and I'll be quiet, and then they'll start up the conversation again. They'll go a step further. And
Mm,
I don't think they would have done that if I had kept yapping.
yeah. So
So
what you're doing then is leaving the space for what's in them to kind of bubble up and find its way.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's perfect. That's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
I'm thinking as you're talking about this that there is also in the element of hearing the story that part of the story may include silence.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
That there may just be part of this story that I need to process, maybe that I just need to sit and I need to just be still,
exactly.
and that leaves room that's part of the meaning making as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
I
That's
know,
yeah,
no.
that's so wise.
Yeah.
I don't envy you the work of being the space holder in between the busyness of the family that's preparing, grieving and preparing, and
Right.
the people and the staff and the da da da, and this person who's going through this sacred passage. But
Yes.
at the same time, it has to be that space has to be held.
So now that leads me to something that I totally forgot to even bring this up, but the grieving.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and some people will grieve and they will tell a story, whether it's traumatic, let's say, someone has taken their life, or it's been
Right.
an accident or whatever, some kind
Right.
of a trauma that has happened, and they really will get stuck in the story.
Mm.
I find that the more that you tell the
Mm.
story changes.
Mm.
And it's almost like you'll find that they will do things like they'll bring in a little humor
Mm-hmm.
where it wasn't there the last time that they
Mm-hmm.
went through it.
Mm-hmm.
I find that really, really fascinating. So I feel like not only, having a story, but telling it,
Yes.
writing it.
Yes.
You'll see how those things change, and you will see healing
Mm-hmm.
through repetitive storytelling.
So the story then becomes a tool, not for saying it's not a restrictive or a definitive story, defining story. It's dynamic. It can
Right,
change. It can
right,
evolve.
right, right. And allowing people to tell the story. But what ends up happening, right, is that
Hmm.
I don't want to talk about it. So then they're stuck in the story.
Hmm. And we don't want to talk about it because it's traumatic, or we don't want to talk about it because it's sad, or we don't want to talk about it because we're scared. But the way through it is into it, like to go
Right.
into it. And if we tell the
Absolutely.
story, and
Right.
then I've seen people when they're telling that difficult story or that sad story or that traumatic story, and if they can contribute together, then that brings healing too, because at least it brings the possibility of healing because they're sort of they're contributing to a shared narrative, which then
Yeah.
becomes it's like they're not carrying it just in their own little box in their heart by themselves. They know that this is a shared experience, and they know that
Yeah.
there are other people who understand as well. And then, I mean, the classic thing in a family or a marriage or a group or
For
whatever, where
sure.
somebody says, "Oh no, no, that was 9 in the morning. That was not 8 in the morning. Oh, I forgot that
Right.
part. Do you want to tell that part?" And
Mhm.
that becomes collaborative, which is creative, which is co-creative, which is lovely.
Right.
That's also healing.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
In your end of life work, what component of that also includes you helping people who remain after someone passes with their grieving, either pre grieving or
Right.
after someone passes?
So, I leave it open obviously to my clients,
Hmm.
and I'll reach out to them a little bit later and just see how they're doing and how they're processing.
Right.
Some people are doing better than others.
Hmm.
And I always, though, that part of the conversation is, that we can obviously talk about it and go from there.
Right.
Um, and again, I'm that safe person for
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
It's so interesting. I don't know, it's like this chain that just it has the potential to go on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You
Um,
performing the service of being willing to be in whatever role energetically, spiritually, emotionally,
yes,
psychically is needed.
right.
Gosh, that's so, I mean, the wisdom of that model is so powerful, I think.
You know what's interesting to me? It's like it's a no-brainer.
To you, it's a
You know what I
no-brainer.
mean?
I mean, hello, you're good at it. It's your thing. You see it. It makes total sense.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
most people with the end of life and all the stuff that goes with it, they're just flummoxed. They're overwhelmed. It's just so big. Again, to your point, we're avoiding it and running from it and in denial about it. And
Yeah.
yet, here you are saying, you know what? This is okay. I'm right here with you. I'm okay. And all those years as a pastor and as a minister and as a spiritual director, there was always something so beautiful about showing up and, hi, I'm like the designated holy person, but these are people who know me, you know what I mean? We're in
Right.
community together, and my job is simply to hold their hand and be present. I mean, there's something really beautiful about that. You can do that in a way that's even more immediate and less formulaic because the pastor kind of has this role that she or he or they are supposed to perform, and they are supposed to know the answers. I never liked having to know the answer. Like, what am I supposed to say? This sucks. It's terrible. I'm so sorry. I'm so sad. What? I mean, what? Do you know what I mean? I will now quote the Bible, and then everything will be fine. Like, that's
Right.
not real. That's not the truth.
Yeah.
So hats
It's
off.
funny when I was very nervous when I started doing this, telling people what I do, right? I was very,
Hmm.
very,
Hmm.
and I noticed that when I would talk about it or tell someone, yeah, I'm an end-of-life doula, and they
Hmm.
would say, well, what is that? Of
Hmm.
course. And I would
Hmm.
tell them, and then they were really interested. So people
Yes.
are interested, um, but they still have that fear. But they've made they're now in touch with somebody. They now
Yeah.
know somebody.
Yeah. Right.
And so when they need me, I'm here. Not everybody
The
needs me.
Well, I mean, not yet. I'm just
Right.
saying. I mean,
Right.
eventually, the idea of the application of the model of the doula who's helping with a transition is so perfect to me. Like the
Duh.
like we're moving from one thing to another, and I'm here to help with the
Right.
transition. I mean, that's really what this is. It's and there's gonna it might it's another birth. I mean, we don't want to talk about it like
Absolutely.
that, isn't
That's
it?
exactly what I say. That's exactly what I say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's a door. We're all celebrating as this person passes through this
Yes.
door.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
tears and there's sadness and there's loss and there's grief and
And there's
look,
joy
yes.
and
Look
there's
at this
humor.
thing. Oh, yes, please. Right. Right, there has to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're
Well,
you're
go
doing
ahead.
a thing doing a thing that is so valuable because so much of our culture is so locked down about all this stuff because we're so scared of our hearts, we're scared of our bodies, we're scared of our feelings, we're scared about aging, we're scared about death,
Oh, I know. I
and
know.
you're just helping them hold space. You're helping them move into something that's unfamiliar, and I'm so glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're helping tons of people too. You do retreats,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
And
I'm
I'm
also going to be
excited.
offering an online class in January, February, and we're going to be talking about this idea about story work and how to identify the story. whatever the story or the stories may be. And I'm really excited to see how that will work out. So we'll see.
That's awesome. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
You're fabulous.
You're fabulous. I'm so seriously, and the way that you're thinking about what you're doing is really deep. Do you know what I mean? Like you're taking it, and I know you have this larger sense of what's happening in the universe. It's not
Yes.
just, this particular thing. That's part of it too, right? For me
Oh,
too.
for
Like this
sure.
is not just, hey, let me help you with your marriage. I mean, this is like,
Right.
we are influencing and helping with the in gigantic tapestry of all of creation, seen and unseen. Like that's real. That's really happening.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
for
what everybody
sure.
comes to me for, but that's part of it.
It is universal. I feel
Yeah.
like and it is so real, even though people don't admit it or they don't see it or whatever, but it's real.
Hello. It's
Right.
real. Hello. And I mean, for me, it's really a matter of just tuning into it and paying attention and being open. And it's practice. I'm just practicing it. I'm just, I get
That's
busy
the
with
whole
the
thing,
errand
right?
and yeah, that is it. That's all that's it. It's the whole thing. Yeah.
I feel like I've just recently, I don't know, I've been listening to a lot of NDE
Mm-hmm.
videos,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Love
there's
them.
always the same thread that people talk about, and it's about love. It's
Yes.
just all about love. It's not about all the money that you made,
No.
it's not about, the big family that you created. It's isn't that strange that like how are we missing that?
We are, I mean, well, and yes, there's so much. Where do we even start? I mean, I would just say that we're in a culture that values things that are upside down. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And we have a macro story that is upside down, that
Yes.
it's all about the externals rather than the internals. And that's what we're valued. And then that's what's reinforced over and over and over in the visuals and the messaging and the story. And so when people have their awakening, whatever that looks like, and when they start to go within, it's just a revelation. They freak out. They're so excited. They're so whatever. And whether it happens in a drum circle or whether it happens in a hospital room or a hospice room or it happens in a retreat center where we're meditating or it happens in a friendship, or it happens when people are all taking psychedelics and sitting holding hands and looking at each other. I mean, I'm telling you, my experience over and over and over is it's love. Like you just said, if we
Yeah.
finally get to it, if we can just peel away all that other shit, we can just say, "Oh my God, I'm love. You're love. It's okay. I'm spirit. You're spirit. It's
I think that it is really a one-on-one lesson between ourselves and spirit. Like I can't make somebody believe that. And no amount of preaching
right. No,
is going to
no,
get anybody there.
no, no. They have to experience it. They have to feel it. They have to enter
And
it.
and I feel a little like when I listen to these NDEs, I'm like, and it's always these people that have never, like, they're not religious,
Right. Right.
it's all,
They always say that.
right. They've
Yeah.
always led like a horrible life,
Mhm.
whatever, and I'm always, after I finish listening, I'm like, I want to have an NDE, but I don't need an NDE. I don't need that. So I'm
Right.
not going to have it.
Right. I'm already there. I'm waked up. I'm tuned in.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how, that kind of sucks.
I know, right?
I
I
think it
want to
would
go
be
be
fabulous.
I want to go be with my ancestors and the angels and see the thing and look at the hall of records and feel the
Yeah,
love pouring in and what are you going to do? You
I
know.
know. I don't know. I don't know. So
We're just
anyway,
going to we're just going to practice it and get the little tastes of it as we go
yes.
while
Yeah.
we're here and
Yes.
know that that's what's coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you,
Thanks.
Rick. I really appreciate this was a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
validating me.
Absolutely. Yeah, Amy, I'm so happy about what you're doing and I honor you for it. It matters. Like it's important. It's sacred work. So thank you for saying yes. You know,
Yeah.
you could have
Yeah.
been doing something else and you're doing this and it matters. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a lot like you. I've transitioned, I've changed a lot,
Mhm.
I've done a lot
Mhm.
of different things in my
Mhm.
in my 50 some years. Who
Mhm.
cares? Like, you know what I
We're
mean?
here now.
Yeah, who
Hello.
cares?
Yeah, right. Right.
So anyway, thanks again, and thank you everybody for watching. And be sure to, I'm going to say that whole thing about
Yep.
be sure to subscribe and comment and share and all that kind of
All that
good
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah, it really is appreciated, and it's important for me. So thanks again for everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye.